Welcome to Broadband Action, brought to you by the Community Broadband Action Network. I'm Curtis Dean. Hello there. I hope you're doing well. It has been a while since we put a podcast up, and that's partially my fault. I had a couple of recordings set up, and things just kind of fell through, and we had holidays and winter and colds and whatnot. Lots of excuses, but we wanted to get back on the horse, and here we are with our latest edition of Broadband Action. We're talking about more G's. Oh, geez, more G's. What do I mean by that? Well, I was spurred to create this podcast, today's episode, because of an announcement that I saw that came out yesterday, and it was about a provider of broadband internet in many parts of the country, in particular the Midwest, where I hail from, who decided to announce that they are going to be transitioning to their new 10G platform in Iowa. This is Mediacom Communications. They're based in New York, but actually Iowa is one of their biggest service areas. They are really one of the dominant, if not the dominant, internet provider in Iowa. They are a provider that operates over a fiber coaxial network. In other words, they don't have fiber all the way to the end user. They have fiber out to a neighborhood node, and then it goes copper from there using coaxial cable. So what does this announcement mean? Well, essentially what Mediacom is announcing is that they've begun to transition to a new type of coaxial cable network infrastructure. The way that cable companies get you internet is using a platform called DOCSIS. It doesn't matter what DOCSIS means. It's just that magic sauce that makes internet go through coaxial cables. Most of the cable operators in America are still operating on a version 3 of DOCSIS, and that is been out for a few years now, and it's capable of speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second in download speeds. The challenge has been for DOCSIS 3 or 3.1 of iteration of it is that it's severely limited in the amount of upload speeds it can provide. And cable networks are not in a real great mood to scrap their cable infrastructure that they've invested in and move to a fiber network. So they have been working, and a lot of research has gone into what they've branded as 10G, but it's also known as DOCSIS 4. What this essentially is they've figured out a way to redo frequencies and reformat equipment and whatnot to be able to provide broadband internet that can go faster in the upload speeds and faster in the download speeds. 10G is kind of a brand name used across the industry. Mediacom is using that for their announcement, and it's essentially going to be capable at some point with various work that has to be done of doing 10 gigabit per second download speeds and upload speeds of up to 10 gigabits per second. What Mediacom's announcement was that just came out here the past few days was that because they are adopting this new 10G platform or DOCSIS 4 in a particular market, West Des Moines, Iowa, which happens to be where I live, they are going to be increasing their upload speed significantly for their customers. They're not actually going to be offering, or at least initially advertising, any download speeds of higher than 1 gig, but they are increasing their upload speeds. So, for example, as you can see from this part of the screen here, it might be hard to read, but they're basically their 100 megabit per second download speed internet, which is their biggest take among their customer base, is going to, instead of having a 10 megabit upload, it's going to have 100 megabits per second upload. So that's a big gain. They're then using that 100 megabit upload speeds for their 300 and 600 megabit per second download speed services. They have a internet gigabit speed that is increasing the upload speeds from 50 to 100 meg. So that'll be 1,000 by 100. But they're also saying we now will offer a 1 gig by 1 gig symmetrical broadband service. They're doing that in 30% of the West Des Moines market where they're upgraded. And it's interesting and probably highly not a coincidence that they're doing this in the West Des Moines market in Iowa, because The city of West Des Moines has been building a conduit network, and they are allowing operators to access that conduit network for a fee in order to upgrade their facilities. So, a company like Mediacom or Google Fiber, which is an anchor tenant of that network as well, or that conduit network, can get in and operate and run cables a whole lot less expensively because they don't have to do the underground work. They just access the conduit, push the fiber or coaxial through, connect it, and away they go. So, as their news release on Business Wire said, they are have about 30% of the West Des Moines market already upgraded. They hope to roll out the rest of West Des Moines by July of 2023, and they'll announce additional markets at a later date. So they have begun the transition to this 10G technology, and there are other big cable operators that have done this. Again, the big difference between what they are doing in advertising versus what, say, fiber network might do and advertise is that last few hundred feet connection to the provider, or from the provider to the homeowner or property owner, is going to be over a coaxial cable. But again, they've done the technology work to be able to squeeze more performance out of that coaxial network. So that's kind of what got me started thinking about this. Now, I've been critical in the past, and here at C-Band, we're always advocating for the best network technologies that are available today. And you would not go out and build a brand new neighborhood or a brand new network and use this 10G technology. You just wouldn't. This technology is of use primarily to large cable companies that do not want to spend the additional capital in order to go fiber all the way to that end user. They've put a lot of time and research and money into this to avoid that big investment at the end. If you were to build a brand new town somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you wanted to have build broadband to that town, you would be putting fiber to the home in. It's actually less expensive to build up front. But it's not less expensive than it would be to basically rip out everything you've got and put in fiber everywhere. And that's why companies like Mediacom are going to this 10G platform. As I mentioned, it is theoretically capable of providing up to 10 gigabit per second downloads and 10 gigabit per second uploads, but it remains to be seen whether that is actually going to be able to work in actual real-world environments. Example, many of the coaxial cables that companies like Mediacom are going to be using have been in the ground or on poles for a very long time. We're talking maybe back as old as the 80s or early 90s. So there's a real question as to whether that coaxial cable has degraded to the point where it won't be able to do the performance that this DOCSIS 4 10 gig platform is capable of. Remains to be seen. The other challenge that I think the companies like Mediacom and others face is the whole problem that they faced in other areas, which is overpromising and under-delivering, at least in the minds of the consumer. I'm not a consumer, so I can't make that judgment. But I've talked to many, many consumers in studies that I've done with my business and also C-Band has done, where people say, yeah, they advertise that, but I can't get anything close to it. So they might be facing some of the same issues here. We'll just have to wait and see. Mediacom has some really smart people, so especially their technical people. So they may have been able to figure this out. So it remains to be seen exactly what is going to happen with it. Okay, so that's the G part of what Mediacom's announcement is, and again, it's only affecting a very small part of their overall footprint. But West Des Moines is going to be kind of their proving ground for this technology, and then I think you'll see them roll it out, most likely in markets where they have a fiber competitor over the next few years. Well, speaking of Gs, let's talk about fiber and Gs, right? Because we know that fiber optic is capable of 1 gigabit symmetrical in almost every case. We know that fiber internet is easily upgradable to 10 gigabits per second in either direction through a new fiber platform called XGS-PON. PON stands for Passive Optical Network. So if you look at a provider that's providing more than 1 gig services over fiber, it likely means that they've upgraded to XGS-PON and are able to do much higher speeds. A couple of examples of big companies that have done this. Here's Google Fiber. also happens to be in West Des Moines where I live. But it's Google Fiber is in a number of markets across the country. And they are advertising now and marketing a 5 gig service. Now, they started out with a 1 gig service, symmetrical, download and upload, and have then recently upgraded it to offer consumers a 2 gig platform or a 5 gig platform. And the prices scale up as you see here on the screen. Their 1 gig is still $70 a month, really cheap. 100 or 2 gig, $100 a month, and 5 gig at $125. So here's an example of Google Fiber deciding to up their game a little bit. Now you may wonder, why don't they go to 10 gigabits per second, since that's likely what that their XGS PON is capable of. Well, I think it's an incremental step, and that they probably feel like in the markets they're in right now, they don't need to offer a 10 gig service, because no one else is, and because consumers aren't really needing it or wanting it quite yet. It's probably coming, but they're saying, well, 5G is a pretty wow thing, and we'll offer that. And then if we get demand for 10 gig services later on, we can certainly do that and offer that as our network grows and as our consumer demand grows. Speaking of 5 gig, Frontier has jumped rather on the 5 gig bandwidth wagon here lately, as they are now in very select markets offering a 5 gig service. I'm not going to get into finding where the checking availability is, because it's pretty small and you won't find it in a lot of places. I know of one community here in Iowa where there's a C-band member, and they have like one neighborhood where Frontier has built fiber, and Frontier is touting this 5G service there. It's still a bit of fiber to the news release in this case with Frontier, because very few areas of their network have been upgraded to the point where they can offer this service. But it's worth noting that it is out there, and they are trying to compete. Frontier was nearly bankrupt a couple of years ago. Really, no one really knew if they were going to be a going concern more than a few years later. Here they are. They wiggled their way out of a lot of debt, and now they're reinvesting in their network in some areas. And so they're, again, advertising this 5G speed. So those are what some of the big guys are doing. And that's all well and good, but one of the things that's interesting to know is that we got a lot of community-based broadband networks, independent telcos, municipals, and others who've been doing a gig for a long time, who have the capability of and are beginning to roll out multi-gig services. One of the leaders in that has been the folks down at Chattanooga, Tennessee, EPB. They're not a C-band member, but I'm working on them. They've been doing 10 gig for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, I believe, and have had great success with it. Cedar Falls Utilities in Iowa, which is a C-band member, has offered 10 gig services here for the past several years. Also, a great deal of success. One of the challenges with 10 gig and the current technologies is that XGS PON is essentially rated at or capable of up to 10 gigabits per second in both directions. It's highly unlikely that anybody ever can get that 10 gig, even if they've got the equipment at their home to do it, because of what we call overhead. In other words, some of that bandwidth gets used just for the process of setting up the connection and going back and forth. Someone else can explain that way better than I did, but that's my understanding of it. And so advertising a 10 gig speed, consumers may be feeling that they are being overpromised when they run a speed test and get 8 or 900 meg, or 8 or 9 gig. Got to adjust your parameters in this world today. However, most people that are subscribing to a reputable, well-loved community network, they don't get too wound up about that. My concern I would have, I'm not really concerned because it's their own business, but the thing that I wonder is a threat for these big companies that are advertising multi-gig services is, will it just feed consumers' existing opinion that their provider, the big guy, overpromises and underdelivers? I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that shakes out. It's certainly not slowing down new competitors entering into the market. It's not slowing down independent and municipalities that are building fiber networks in many, many locations across the nation. But the big guys are not laying down to just go to sleep and let those community-based providers take over. They are working on ways to fight back. And again, the market will tell how well they do with that. But that's certainly something that we want to make sure that everybody is aware of. So if you see your local cable operator or a phone company bragging to you about their new multi-gig services, I think it's worthy of an investigation, but you may not want to jump until you've heard if that actually is playing out in the real world the way it plays out on a news release. Before I let everybody go today, I want to remind everybody about the Community Broadband Action Network's Spring Forum. Hopefully you're not listening to this after it's over, but the C-Band Spring Forum is on April 4th, and it's going to be held in Johnston, Iowa. And this is an event that is going to focus on the 3 pillars of digital inclusion. Those are access, adoption, and affordability. And we've got a great little agenda scheduled and plenty of networking time. I think that's the big benefit of this event, is we'll have lots of opportunities for our attendees to network, not only with other C-Band members and persons involved in community-based broadband, but also we have associate members that are helping sponsor the event that'll be there talking about the products and services that they provide. So what do you do now? Well, you go to broadbandaction.com and you sign up for the C-Band Spring Forum on April 4th. Of course, if you're in Massachusetts or California or Oregon or some of our other members that are far flung and not close to Iowa, we understand if you can't make it. We're working on ways that we can, at the very least, record this content and make it available to our C-Band membership after the fact. But if you are in the Midwest, come on down and join us for the C-Band Spring Forum. It's coming up on April 4th. In the meantime, if you have any questions about anything we're doing here at C-Band, make sure you reach out to us. We are always looking for great ideas, not only for our podcasts, but also looking for great ideas for our other events that we're doing, and also looking for great ideas for new members. So we ask our current members to always spread the word about our membership and send people to us. Again, our web address is broadbandaction.com. And you can always email us at hello@broadbandaction.com, and we will respond to you just as soon as we can. Just like a gentleman in rural America who emailed the other day to hello@broadbandaction because he was struggling with how to get broadband in his rural area. We've already engaged with him and getting him in contact with officials in his county to hopefully make the case that broadband access there is important and maybe even make it happen for them. So that's one of the things we do for our members, is we try to make connections to the right people. So join us at broadbandaction.com, learn more about our summit, sign up for our newsletters, and of course, keep checking back for our next, latest, and greatest edition of Broadband Action. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.